Welcome to Tail Learn Code. Here there will be tales about software development, learning from each other, code to build solutions. And now your host, Chad Green.
Hey everyone, how's everyone doing today? Been a pretty good day for me. It was nice, got my wife's car all fixed up. So that's always a good thing when the wife's car is all set to go. Weirdest thing, the seat pan part of it broke off. Of course, the car has like 3,000 miles on it, so that's definitely not something you expect that early on. Okay, real quick, I need to make one other change that I forgot to change here before we continue and before I forget. So we don't have we'll have Sean on here in a moment, but we don't want him double. Although Sean is that awesome, maybe we do want him double. All right, actually this time it's coming up correctly. That's weird. Maybe it won't come up double. We'll see once we actually start that part of everything. All right, let's move over here real quick. A couple quick things I want to promote, which is all about Code PaLOUsa. So, Code PaLOUsa is coming up, just 68 days, 20 hours away. Man, I got a lot of work to do in 68 days. Going virtual did not make it any easier. There's still a lot of work to be done. But so that's coming up. Lots of great speakers. If you take a look at our list of speakers, just some really great speakers. I love the fact that we're able to get all these great speakers every year. Have 103 of them this year. It's always been a big part of Code PaLOUsa, having tons of different speakers coming in. So if you are interested in attending, there is a way to get a free ticket. Let me type that in there. There's the information for all that. But you can sign up between now and June 26th. A couple different ways you can sign up, and you'll be in the entry for Code PaLOUsa tickets. Right, so that'd be great. And sure enough, today we're continuing on our speaker series. So Tuesday we had Kevin Griffin, but today we'll have Sean Whitesell, and as you can see, we have a whole slate of other speakers coming up. And I mean, this was awesome. I sent out an email to speakers, hey, I'd like to do this. And I mean, we quickly booked up all the slots. And I've got speakers who are emailing me every day since then, hey, there's no more slots available. So we will be scheduling some other times, probably early evening times. Because as I said, I still want to do actual coding on my live coding stream. So I'll be, so look for some additional dates coming up with some other great speakers. So with that, sure enough, let's see if we can, there we go. And my camera will come up. Every once in a while I have to hide it and then re-show it. Well, maybe we won't see me. That's awesome. Let's just try this again. I promise this was working just a moment ago. There we go. Now I'm up here. I have found that with OBS, when I change screen, sometimes I have to hide my video and show it back up. Technology is awesome. So with that, like I said, we've got Sean Whitesell, who's become a really good friend of mine. So I'm really happy to have him in here. I'm happy that he's a Code PaLOUsa speaker. I think he's kind of upset he wasn't able to actually come to Louisville and speak. That's one of the great things about speaking at Code PaLOUsa is you get to come to the city where we have a couple places where you can get bourbon, right? And good selections of bourbons, and not pay a fortune for it, right? I mean, bourbon's pretty much the hot thing nowadays all over the world, but here it's usually a whole lot cheaper. But that being said, so Sean, welcome to the stream. Of course, I think you've probably been on the stream more, at least in the chat, more than anybody else, which has been awesome. I always appreciate folks joining in and being part of that chat. Makes the coding go even, I don't know if it makes the coding go faster, because I probably get less done when people are chatting, but makes it more fun. So Sean, just quickly introduce yourself, especially because this will be your first time speaking at Code PaLOUsa. So probably this is probably the furthest east you've spoken, right? Even though technically it's all over now, all over the world, but
Yeah, I think it is. It will be the furthest east that I have spoken at a conference. And although I was in the Huntsville, Alabama area last October, I didn't speak at that conference. It was more visiting.
well, Huntsville is west of us.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure on that. Um, so yeah, thanks for having me. This is fun. This is unique. It's first for me, so it's really I really enjoy to kind of spread my wings, and as I get into more conferences and more user groups and more speaking opportunities, it's a new challenge for me, and it's pretty unique. And you still get the butterflies, and but you kind of learn to work with that, and that's just part of the growing pains, I guess, of being able to speak in public. But so a little bit about myself. I am the user group leader in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and I have been for, in fact, next month it'll be 11 years that I've been president, and it has been an absolute blast. The group has grown. I have certainly grown because of it, and just been very thankful for that. Unique members, unique friends. Just been fantastic. I am a cloud architect with TokenX here in Tulsa, and which is a tokenization company. What we do is we encrypt and secure credit card information. Basically, we'll take a credit card number, give you a token back, and then as you use that, from your retail to any other like storage or payment processors, things like that. If it was to get hacked, people have a token, but they have no idea what is in it, and they can't redeem that for anything unless you're actually on the approved list to actually get that information. So it's very tightly controlled, thankfully. In fact, I can't even speak too much about it, just because part of it I don't know all the details, which is nice, and just because of the very security nature of it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been a lot of fun. Been there for almost a year. In fact, July 1st will be my 1 year there.
Well, congrats.
And yeah, thank you. And it's been a lot of fun. It's been a good challenge, and I've grown quite a bit. So more fun.
Cool. Well, that's awesome. So, so I'm curious. So also, you're ASP Insider.
Yes.
Right. And I don't think a lot of people know what that really is. So I mean, what does it mean that you're an ASP Insider?
Well, it used to mean back before things were open source that you were able to get in on the changes that were yet to be released and be able to provide a lot of feedback. These days, you certainly can still provide a lot of feedback. It's still requested, although it's open source, so that the opportunity for feedback can come from more people than just the ASP insiders. But it allows us to communicate with one another, to work on not just team things, but to anything that can help with the ASP.NET environment and help it grow.
Mm-hmm. That's funny. I think, I'm just now thinking about it. I think ASP is probably one of the first things, not necessarily the first thing, but one of the first things that Microsoft really did open source. And I remember, I don't remember what conference I was at, but I was at a conference where it wasn't Scott Koo, but I think it was Scott Hansman made the announcement that they were going to open source everything. And I remember the room just being floored. It was like, you're going to do what? Right? I mean,
Yeah.
Are you sure you work for Microsoft? Are you going to be able to go back to that job at Microsoft, right?
Yeah, that's scary, right? I mean, that's like, opening the king, the giving out the keys to the kingdom kind of a feeling, right? And just, we're just going to open that magic door and let everybody in, and you can see everything behind the curtain. And it was such a unique culture shift, but it had to happen. And in fact, I think it made Microsoft even stronger.
No, I agree.
As a competitor by opening things up like that. So it was a unique change, and I'm glad they did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know. early on into Azure Functions, I was doing presentations and I would talk about how it was open sourced, and someone asked me, well, why does that really matter? And I remember telling them, I said, well, the biggest thing why it matters is that you know exactly where Microsoft's going with it. So, and here you're talking about technology you're probably going to depend your business off of. And if Microsoft is going to make a decision and tomorrow say, well, we're not going to do this anymore, right? I mean, that could badly or goodly affect you, right? That's part of open source is what's gonna happen for the most part. I mean, Microsoft does have a policy that they do some stuff behind, they do stuff in closed branches. But I think if I remember right, it's like within 45 days, I think it is, they're required to put it into a public branch. And I know there's some things that they like for example, Maui was not in a public branch for a while, right? Because obviously they wanted to be able to break that at build, which, admittedly, that's one of the things I'm really looking for in .NET 5. And I'm not, actually really .NET 6, I guess, but and I'm not a front-end developer, right? And I think you heard me joke the other night. You don't want me to be a front-end developer. I'm bad at it.
Yeah, I'm much the same way. I'll throw some colors together and go, I hope that works. I'll have to rely on somebody else's expertise to.
Most architects, you don't want them building the front ends.
Exactly.
I think most of us have seen how to build it and what makes something look good, but we can't do it, right? Give me Visio, and I can make it looking great in Visio, right?
Yeah, well, because we have a limited color palette, and if the icon has colors, then great, Yeah, exactly.
So, sure. I mean, one of the things I've learned, talking to you over the past year, so architects do different things, right? Like for me, I'm mostly a solution architect, right? So, my main responsibility is figuring out the solutions, right? We're going to use this technology and this is how we're going to code it. And usually I do a proof of concept. But, talking to you, I mean, you do more of the networking side of it, if I understood everything correctly, right?
More so the infrastructure, not just network. So I have to worry about network security. If we're going to build out a virtual network, how large is that, and how many subnets do we need? What do we need? What do we need to? Not what we need, but what kind of governance do we need for traffic between the subnets and inside the subnets? For example, in one subnet you'll have database servers that they need to communicate with each other for mirroring and log shipping, things like that, right? Whatever like SQL Server need to use in a enterprise environment. But with web servers, you don't want them talking to each other because they're not really meant to. In fact, if they do talk to each other, then that could actually be a rogue code that got in somehow. And so we even go to steps to prevent that. It's like in this subnet, computers are not allowed to talk to each other because they're not meant to, but they are allowed to jump to database server, but not this other subnet. So we're governing what they can and cannot do, as well as how many virtual machines do we need? What size do we need of those? What kind of load are we anticipating? What kind of growth are we anticipating? How easy is it to change the type of virtual machine, and or if we just need to add RAM and things like that? And how do we handle failover? What about which region should we be in? Although I personally specialize in Azure, that's not the only place that we're dabbling in, and that I dabble in. So it's there's a lot of that thought process to how do we make this enterprise work, and in fact we don't even put all of our eggs in one basket, right? You want to maybe put some over here in this environment, you maybe put other part of your business in a different environment for different needs, depending on what you have. And so I deal with a lot more than just networking, and which is fun. Networking is, I don't want to say easy, but that's something that you kind of get conquered in a month or two kind of thing, where it's the rest of the build out that is also concerning.
I gotta admit,
So I
I
also
probably disagree with you. Networking being easy.
yeah, it's
I mean,
it's
I did
not
a lot of work
easy.
for DoD, and it seemed like networking was always our biggest problem.
It can be, yes, absolutely. But once you have that ironed out and then go, okay, this is what we need to do for the next environment or production and this different region, then that part is kind of easy to stamp out. It's more of the proof of concepts and proving things out and understanding the nuances between how Amazon handles their networking and how Azure handles their networking. A little different. And so which also means that I'm also working with products like Terraform
Mm-hmm.
and Ansible and Packer, as well as now Pulumi. So now I can write using C Sharp, writing code that will build out the resources in Azure and other
Mm-hmm.
clouds.
So you all are doing multi-cloud, mul- multiple vendors.
So what I can say
Yeah, sure.
is I
What you
can't
could
say.
say, yeah,
Yeah,
I completely understand that too.
yeah, yeah. Because there's also you got public clouds. There's also private
Mm-hmm.
clouds. So um, to say what we're doing, that I cannot say, but I can say that we're dabbling in various areas because we need to learn the strengths and weaknesses of those different providers so that they are leveraged in the right way.
I guess where I was going with that, are you doing, some companies, they're basically duplicating services on different vendors. Are you doing that, or are you doing different services within? And again, not trying to get into what services you're using, but
Well, and I still have to be very
sure.
careful because of the very nature of it. And it was kind of like there was a retail company that got hacked. Their credit card system got hacked, not because of their network, but because of the HVAC
Mm-hmm.
system. And it was somebody hacked into the HVAC provider, that vendor
One that was
that
Target. I
had,
mean, that's very well. I mean,
yeah,
that's a
yeah,
pretty well known story, and it's definitely a
yes,
good thing to think about.
it is. It absolutely is. And there's a convenience store chain that when I worked there, and I'd learned that they've got multiple tiers in their networking where you got developers on one network, stores on another, credit card system on another. You cannot accidentally get to a server you should
Right.
not be in. They had it locked down, which that was I was very glad to hear that. And they took those a lot of extra steps to help secure that information. And I don't I don't think they've ever been hacked that I'm aware of.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so unlike the story with Target, where it got onto the HVAC system, had to be on the same network, the same VLAN or virtual network, whatever, as the credit card system. Hey, guess what we have,
Mm-hmm.
right? And they just sit there and hack away until they got in. Um, so to say that what we're doing, I cannot say, but we're looking at multiple aspects. Again, strengths and weaknesses of various things, and there's some things like, for example, with Azure and with their Azure firewall. I was playing with that for a while and realized this is not going to work for us. And we were able to go to a third-party solution running on virtual machines, and then you got to learn how does that
Mm-hmm.
work. And well, if you're talking about a firewall, what OSI layer is that really sitting on? And since Azure's network is a layer 3 overlay, as they call it, so what are the pros and cons of that? Are there additional uh, latency delays that we need to know about and have to consider? So there's a lot of other aspects that we just dig into and find out and put it to the test. So
It's funny you're talking about different networks and not being able to access. I mean, it just gives me vivid bad memories of my work with DoD, right? 'Cause I mean,
Yeah.
there it was dev was completely separate, test was completely separate. Actually, we had two test networks, plus a production network, and it was.
Yeah.
I don't know if they ever materialized in us, but when I was leaving, one of the things they were talking about was, so at the time you could be on the production network and access development, right? Couldn't be on the development network and access production, but on production you can access development. And they were talking about actually switching that off, basically turning off that pipe in between. And of course, I remember, as one of the team leads, I'm sitting here, program leads, I should say. I'm sitting on, wait a second, what does that mean? Right? Because they want to separate all of them. I'm like, oh yeah, well that means you're going to have a different machine to access those, and I'm like, well, so wait. Does that mean I gotta have my developers have to have 4 machines on their desk? And they were like, yeah. And of course I'm like, okay, right now it's government, right? It takes 12 weeks for me to get a person and a machine. Once they're on board, right? I mean,
Yeah.
You're like, oh yeah, it won't be a problem. And I'm like, oh, okay. So they actually were talking about changing that to creating virtual machines. So at least your production machine can hit a virtual machine that was lived in that network.
That was just additional proof as to why we now have continuous integration, continuous deployment pipelines, so that mid step is automation. And
so I'm curious what again, I haven't, most everyone I worked with, most everyone that was in my program is no longer there, for various reasons. But I'm curious, when I was there, they were refusing to allow us to do CI/CD.
Wow.
I mean, it was very adamant about that, right? And I grant you, I mean, this is now going on 4 years ago, so hopefully things have changed. But they were pretty adamant about that.
Yeah, when you could take the human element out, not that automation is without humans, because something had to program it, right? But you help minimize the accidental steps, and which helps add to some of the quality and the security aspects. And it doesn't, not by itself make it secure, but it helps add to that warm and fuzzy confidence in that for level of security and such. So CI/CD is absolutely needed, and the more free somebody up, right, and you get more work done, and the more automation that you can bring in.
Now, of course,
and
my story was our last release. We were my current company, we were deploying deploying a new component, right? And so the DevOps guy, he makes a copy of a good template, and changes it for everything, and then we go to run it day of production, and it's failing. And it turned out the one he copied from, which was created years ago, that one had a different permission. And it was a good thing, right? It failed as in we couldn't complete the deployment, right? But that's again, if you were doing it by hand, you probably wouldn't have noticed that. And so it was actually a win. It was during our retrospective we talked about it, and I was like, well, actually that was a win, because if we did that by hand, we probably wouldn't have noticed, and would have deployed something that actually it actually would not have caused a problem with what it was causing. But it's good to know for something future. You never know.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's where automation. I'm very, very much for it. It frees you up. I mean, I've done quite a bit of it. Use a lot of it with Azure DevOps, and doing specialized things. We're building, leveraging Packer, for example, to build out a custom image, and doing exactly what I need it to do, and having the exact operating system, and as well as the tools installed on that operating system. In fact, playing around with that with Ansible, I found a kind of a gap uh, in something that it was there was something that Ansible could not do, and because there's some of the operating systems that are tied with CIS, so that they are already approved for kind of a security use in a sense. They lock down, and you can get that off the Azure Marketplace, among others. And so when you do that, you have to specify not just the image name, but also plan information. And I'd found a weakness in the Ansible thing that it wasn't allowing me to build a virtual machine scale set and pass that plan information in. It's like, well, all right, let's see if I can. What is this going to take to fix this? Well, I found out. Sorry, it's written in Python. At least that part for the script that Ansible is using. So I got in there and I dug for quite a while. And long story short, I submitted a PR and it did get accepted. So it helped fix that part for Ansible and got to now be considered an official contributor to Ansible for that. So did that, I think, about this last winter. So, yeah.
Let's go back to your user group. Sure enough,
Yeah.
One of the benefits of the pandemic is I actually can go attend other people's user groups that, but so, I mean,
Yeah.
I think you guys got a really, really good group there. I mean, it's, so you definitely have your core set of folks, which I think most user groups have.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, so I know you've been doing some things differently because of the pandemic, other than just, broadcasting it. I mean, you're using WebEx to broadcast it, but talk about some of the other things you've been doing differently because of the pandemic.
Well, there's been some local members that kind of dropped off for whatever reason, I don't know. But we also gained new members from around the world. I've seen people come in from Belgium and Dublin and Istanbul, and among others. So the reach has been one of the biggest differences, but also because of being able to get hold of some other speakers. I was like, I got to make use of this. I want to capitalize on this, and so now we're meeting twice a month. And Cisco was very nice to WebEx and sponsor that for us. So I'm just about completely booked with September, but we're booked all through summer, twice a month, and I love it. And some of them are, like at our next meeting on the 23rd, I've got two speakers, so 2 talks in one night. July 7th, 2 speakers one night, and like, why not? I want to pile this on and I can get a hold of these people. So while we are virtual, and like I even found out that the room that we used to meet in, it's not available for us. So at least not during the while, because they're still not brought all the employees back in, and that's fine, right? So I'm booked through the summer, so it's fine with me. But being able to reach people, had Scott Hunter from Microsoft as a speaker. That was fantastic. Steve Gordon over in England, have him as a speaker. That was fantastic. Omar Santos, who is one of the security experts over at Cisco, he was a speaker last March, and that's been so. Just being able to reach people and both as members and speakers has been fantastic.
Cool. Yeah. So I know I've been using the benefit, the fact that I can get speakers who I would never be able to get. I mean, I also have Scott. I mean, Scott was on the other night. You know who I've got coming in September. I'm still not allowed to announce it till after next week, but got another.
I got him for later.
Yep.
That same month. Yes.
But got another big Microsoft person coming in. That's as much as I'll say about it. Yeah. But and sure, I'm actually in the middle of a conversation with several other product managers at Microsoft. Which you wouldn't normally be able to get those in, right? I mean, and not that they don't want to, right? But they're not going to fly to Louisville, Kentucky to do a 1-hour presentation, right? It's not feasible, right? And not only about you, I mean, I try not doing remote speakers when we're meeting in person because it just doesn't seem to work as well. It always seems like we have some type of audio issue. Half the time we can't hear the speaker, or they can't hear us, or
Right.
Admittedly, one of the interesting ones I did was the speaker was coming from, I don't remember which country, but I want to say India, but it was definitely that area of the world. So that was interesting, right? Because you had the lag going on. Because as awesome as the internet is, speed of light is only the speed of light.
Right. Yes. Exactly.
But
yeah, exactly. It's been great to reach the people that when I got a hold of Scott Hunter, when I met him, I was like, man, I need to find a way to twist your arm to get you to come to Tulsa. He's actually from Little Rock, which is only 4.5 hours away from me. And it's that it's just a matter of timing, and he's a very busy guy, right? Then when we went virtual, I contacted him and I said, okay, now how can we work this out? He says, okay, now we can do this. So now he does the user group talks from his home, and he's speaking at several user groups, not just ours, but I've had several people contact me going, hey, can I get a hold of Scott too? So I'll get a hold of Scott on their behalf, and let Scott contact him as far as scheduling something. But being able to reach people has been fantastic. Out of the comfort of their own home. Spend an hour and a half with us.
No, I mean, when you heard Scott the other night, he was like, he wants to be able to attend other groups, not just as a speaker, but as someone just attending and being part of the social parts of it. And that was awesome to hear, right? It's and more importantly, it is important for the community, right? And I think it's something, I think it's one of the benefits again of the pandemic, right? Because we're having to meet virtually, is allowing us to get those kind of people, be able to hang out. And again, I'll say, I mean, Scott Hunter is definitely, you see him at a user group, definitely go attend it, because he candidly answers questions. Sometimes he has to watch what he says. Oh, yeah. That's why there were a couple of questions where I didn't ask until we were done recording, right? Because I was like, okay, I won't ask you this while we're recording, so I won't, you won't be recorded for this, but because one of the questions I asked him afterwards was, what do you think about .NET after 6, right? I mean, obviously there's a pretty solid plan through 6, but I didn't want to lock him down, right? That's why I purposely asked that after the recording.
Yeah.
And even then, he was definitely a little bit, didn't give all the details, but definitely gave you some good insight into what they're looking at so far.
Well, and I think that goes back to what you were talking about earlier, that with the stuff open sourced, with .NET open sourced, you get to see what are they deprecating, what are they working on, what are they bringing in, and you as an architect, a tech leader that's watching that movement, you can help better steer your applications and your company for that maintainability and growth of the applications. So if you know something is going to be deprecated, any kind of product, even if it's Azure something or Amazon or whatever, right? As you know something's going to be deprecated, the sooner you know, the sooner you can help change gears, and maybe that changes on what you're working on that very sprint. But
well, I think Scott actually addressed it the other night, and I think he did. Because we were talking about VB, and I think this was after we went offline. I mean, going offline, we were still online. We were still on Zoom, but because there was some questions about the decision to I mean, again, VB is still supported. It's just not going to receive any updates. And really, the way, I mean, sure enough, for those concerned, think about it, it's just like .NET. The .NET framework is still going to be supported for a long time, because there's just way too many applications out there not to be, right? But he made the comment of, we can't do like what we did Silverlight again, and just that's no longer supported. All right. Yeah. And the interesting part is you can understand why Microsoft did what they did, and it really wasn't their fault. You could blame Steve Jobs for all that, but still, it still burned a lot of developers. Of course, now what most people don't realize is Silverlight actually still lives. It's .NET Core.
Yes, exactly. Not in its entirety, but yes, when they were,
it's one of the pieces that that made .NET Core possible.
Yes, absolutely. And when they said, okay, let's rewrite .NET so that take our lessons learned out of framework, but make it cross-platform. How are we going to get there? And of course, it was brought up going, Silverlight has already crossed that bridge. And so they took not the everything of Silverlight, but a lot of the base things about Silverlight that made it great. And I don't mean just like the UI and the XAML stuff, but I mean the core pieces that made it cross-platform. And that's what they, from there, built .NET Core. And so it wasn't a 100% rewrite, but it was enough of a rewrite that it's cross-platform, it's faster, it's getting even faster and smaller. And we saw Scott demoing that. So .NET Core 3.1 compared to .NET 5, 5 will be faster in a lot of respects. And now you get headed towards that unification of, doesn't matter what kind of app you want to write, now it's going to be on one solid base of libraries, and only from get what you need, kind of a mentality on that. So, but
no, it's at the summit, and I remember talking to you about it during the summit. That was the reason why I'm so excited about Maui and about the things that were, the whole, for those who don't know, so starting with 5 and going forward, well, no, I think it was starting with 6, I guess. The only things you'll be able to build out of the box is a console app and a class library. Anything else, you have to actually add on. All right, and it's it's going to be real easy because it's Microsoft. Everything's, if anything, the reason why there's so many developers doing Microsoft development is because it's easy. Really big quotes, right? Easy, but But I think that's a great way of doing it. Again, doing a lot of work with Azure Functions, where I'm purposely working on building my packages as small as possible. It's great to hear those kind of things.
Yeah, and going back to what you said something earlier about VB.NET, with the changes of C# that they're doing, so much of the language changes for C#8, C#9, it doesn't make sense to force Visual Basic to adhere to the same things. So now there's that they are going to be kind of split. So VB will still be around, but it's not going to be all that feature rich stuff that C# gets. So and that wasn't it wasn't a flippant decision. It was thought out and just said, it just makes sense. Let's let them diverge. They need to, don't put square peg in round hole. Let's keep them separated. So I was surprised, and I have Kathleen Dollard. I have met her years ago. She came to Tulsa and spoke at Tulsa Tech Fest. And she's been the VB.NET person for many, many years. So that's why I was kind of surprised to find out that it was her that said
it was her proposal. Yes.
Yeah. And so let's not force this what it shouldn't be. So, and that makes sense. It totally makes sense.
And for those who don't know, Kathleen Dollard is basically the head of VB.NET.
Yeah.
So and that was, it was because the comment was made, and actually I think it was Sean who made the comment. It's like, oh, Kathleen must have been really upset, and Scott was like, no, it was actually her proposal.
Yeah, and it wasn't flippant. It was I can see her going, no, let's be careful about this, and let's make the right decision. And if you watch her in any other talks, like she did recently at Build, you can tell she's always, it's like her baby. I mean, it's what love does this thing need, and treat it as that. So
yeah, I mean, sure enough, I said the other time, I'm sad to hear that happen. I mean, that's how I grew up in this industry. I mean, my first programming language was Microsoft Basic, and I've done others, but I mean, I did Microsoft Basic, I did GW Basic, Quick Basic, and VB1, right? I mean, I remember the days when I mean, well, I look back upon it. I mean, back then I didn't think about it, but VB1 couldn't talk to a database. And when you get a couple of years later, and that's what everyone related VB to, is an easy language to talk to a database and put the data up. That's why it became so popular. And I was like, hey, no, actually VB1 you couldn't even touch the database. You could get text files, right? But you couldn't touch an actual database.
Yeah, I remember because I did the same thing. I was doing programming Basic on my first computer that didn't even have a hard drive. So storing everything to floppy disk, but they called it a RAD, a Rapid Application Development System, and I remember those days vividly. You got the 16-bit, 32-bit, and then like, is there really that much difference? Yes,
oh, yeah.
Absolutely is. Certainly with VB, I think it was VB4 thereabouts, and then. That you had to choose.
Yes, it was VB4.
Yep. But yeah, that was a lot of fun back in those days. And it's like kind of like what I tell people with I hate math. It's like, well, while you're learning it in school, understand that it's more about how to think. It's like, well, who's ever going to use math when they get out of school? How many times am I really going to need to do a quadratic? It's more about how to think.
Yeah.
Unless you're going to specialize in math, which totally makes sense. Other than that, it's a way of thinking. And when you're learning Basic, just for loops and if, the switch logic, and it's a way of thinking, right? And so now it's just I've grown up with that, and it helps us at this age. And certainly as now we're tech leaders, and people are coming to us for advice and going, okay, let's go down our thought list, and let's see how things make the most appropriate decisions. A lot of that stemmed from our early days of understanding simple programming logic. I think. I mean, that's what I attribute it to.
Yeah. So we have another old man in the chat, and I say old man. It's a really good friend of mine, but saying Basic on Commodore 64, circa 1984. And when I say old man, I served in the Marine Corps with him, so it's I know exactly. So he and I are around the same age. Actually, he's younger than I am, but
yeah, it was in 1985 or 6. I remember at the library at the school that I attended that they had an Apple IIG, and that's when I was like, okay, for loop and print my name, and okay, I printed my name 10 times. What am I going to do with this? What else is there, right? But it exposed me to that you could do that.
Mm-hmm.
They had MS-DOS 5 and 6 there on the other computers, and I'd get into debug and go open up files and such, and people walk by going, "What are you doing?" And I'm looking at stuff inside the computer and just looking at, "Wow, you're like super smart." I have you confused,
right.
Go ahead and believe that. Go ahead and pay no attention to the fact that I don't know what I'm doing. Just poking around, playing with that stuff. It was fantastic.
Yeah, I had the interesting aspect. I mean, nowadays it's so funny when I talk to younger folks, 30, 35 years old, right? But and I tell them, oh yeah, I started using a computer when I was like 7, and they're like, why did it take you so long? I'm like, well, that was 1977, right? So it's But I had the interesting aspect. So my father was a software developer. Well, I mean, still is. Although he's mostly retired now. So I had a lot of hand-me-down computers. So I was dealing with interesting computers to begin with, right? Working, a lot of HP machines, and so learning a lot of Unix before I even knew what Unix was.
Yep.
And then, sure enough, my first computer was an Atari. My first computer that was mine, right, was an Atari 400, which, if you remember, so there was a Atari 400, Atari 800. The Atari 800 had a regular keyboard. The 400 had that type pad thing. You had to pretty much bang on to it. And I would write whole applications in that thing. Well, games, because I mean, again, I was like 9.
Oh yeah.
But yeah. But it's funny you talk about going to the library. Everything. I remember when I was in either 7th or 8th grade, and our school got an Apple computer, and I would go in there. I'd be bored to death because I'm like, okay, do I really need to come here? I can go home and do the a whole lot more than this, right? And I would just be shocking the teachers because I'm just let's just do this and. But yeah. So let's talk about the talks you're going to be doing at Code PaLOusa, all right? And I know I won't grill you too much on one of them because you haven't written it yet.
Yeah.
But which for those who don't know, most speakers don't write their talks until at least it's selected. And I know some until the week of. Yeah. Never done that before.
Exactly.
But well, let's first talk about your microservice talk, which I know you've written that because I've seen it several times. But so what is? I mean, obviously the title kind of gives it away. But I mean, what is the premise of that talk? Microservices, easy way is the wrong way.
Yeah, in fact, it was a year ago that I was, working on some microservices, and then I got selected to speak at the Kansas City Developer Conference. And it's like, all right, with this talk, and it's like, all right, I need to, and, I even changed the title at the time, and so anyway, I put this together, and of course, I'm so introverted that in a lot of ways, and like, okay, I read it by several people going, okay, but at least am I right? Am I right? Well, microservices is kind of an abstract thing still, so to say that it's right, is you got to. It's like, well, yes, for the most part, that kind of stuff. So anyway, it grew, and I learned a lot through the process of just even trying to explain microservices to others helped me build that talk so that I could, using images and examples in the talk to help make sure that I'm conveying things correctly, right? And so the premise is that if you think you need to do microservices because it's the latest buzzword, don't do them. And as you think, oh, they're easy, no, there's a lot of fallacies about them. And so the idea is that I'm going to talk about what a microservice really is, how you should really think of them and how to treat them, and that what you think is easy is not. And if you're going to do microservices, here's what you developers need to know. Like networking. And well, why do developers need to worry about network? Well, now you do, because that's the point of a microservice is you're making one call from a computer to another computer. Well, it's like, well, if it's still in memory on the same computer, that's not necessarily a microservice by definition.
Right.
So anyway, so we talk about that. We talk about how, and I repeat this so many times in my talk, microservices should be treated and thought of as an independent application. Therefore, it needs all the love and attention as any other independent application. From logging, monitoring, network access, security, to the deployment pipeline, as we mentioned earlier. So it just goes over a lot about how to think of microservices, and I joke through my talk that if you get the idea that I'm trying to talk you out of it, you're right.
Mm-hmm.
They are harder than they initially appear. That doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. But it could be that there's a different pattern that may work better for you.
Cool. And so in this one, I mean, I know for a fact you haven't actually even written this yet, but so yeah, your other one is kickstart into Azure networking. I mean, where do you think you're going to go with that? I mean,
yeah. So the idea is that with Azure Network, what's a VNet? What is a virtual network? How to understand sizing of that, subnets, and understanding like when you go from a subnet mask to thinking in CIDR, the CIDR, that it's a different way of seeing it, and that Azure uses CIDR instead of subnet masks in sizing things, so that plays a little difference. And then go through on like a network security group and how to govern access from one server to another. Should it be allowed? Should you block it? How do well, what if I need to control internet access? Well, what is a DMZ? Let's talk about building out a DMZ subnet and controlling access that way. And we'll talk about what is north-south, east-west traffic. North-south being the internet facing things, and east-west is computer to computer inside type traffic. So we'll talk a lot about that, and then talking about some of the other Azure resources that help manage that, as well as, and if I can, I'll get into things like Traffic Manager, Azure Firewall, and some of the other details that help make it more of a full-size solution instead of just proof of concept things.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm looking forward to that talk. I personally, I'm not a fan of doing networking stuff. I like other people to do that for me. And let me just listen into let me provide my judgment about it, but I don't want to do it. But I appreciate that you submitted that talk, because it's not a type of talk we get very often, but it's definitely a type of talk that I think more people need to understand. Yeah. And again, I mean, again, this is all about promoting Code PaLOusa, but one of the great things about Code PaLOusa this year is most sessions will be recorded, and you'll be able so it's not like you have to make the choice of, do I want to listen to again, one of the benefits of the pandemic, usually if you got 12 sessions going at the same time, you're probably going to be more than one session you want to attend that hour. Exactly. Now you don't necessarily have to make that choice, right? Other than if there's a talk that will not be recorded, because very few are not being recorded. I mean, literally a handful so far. Yeah. So you'll want to note those, because I probably want to attend that because I really want to hear that. But so like I say, I think I would be willing to bet that will be a talk that a lot of people watch on the recording, right? Because they'll be like, hey, I'm dealing with this problem. Here, I can attend to, I can listen to what Sean had to say, and maybe rethink of some of the things I'm doing.
And there's little nuances about different, like even on the Azure Load Balancer, you can make an internal load balancer. But if you have a public one, that you can actually have outbound rules, not just inbound rules, but you can't do that with an internal one. So there's little nuances to know about and play with. So yeah, that'll be my other talk, is to really kind of bring up a lot of those things. And I'm sure a lot of it will be by slides, only in case of internet issues, things like that. I mean, now that's the other thing about going virtual is, we're at the mercy of, as I am here, is at a residential internet line.
Well, perfect example. The reason why you see Sean's green screen today is because his camera wasn't working as we're getting ready to do the Skype call, right? Yeah, so it's Sean's on a backup, right?
Exactly. I'm on my work laptop instead, and instead of my personal one, and I don't know what happened to that camera. So I think the drivers or something failed on it, whatever.
Technology's awesome.
Isn't it?
sure enough, my computer is alerting me. It's got an update that needs a restart, and as you well know, it took me a while to get the Skype settings working, and I'm like, I'm not close to Skype, right? so I'm like, I'll wait. I'm like, I'll wait till after Sean's interview, because then I'll have a couple days, if I figure it out again, if all of a sudden everything broke again.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. You and I have spent some time playing, and thanks to our wives, right, who have been very gracious to. I'm going to be in the office for the next several hours talking to my friend over there, and we're still working out details. And
I think my wife is like, well, at least you're in bed every night, so that's
yeah.
As opposed, I mean, because I normally am gone twice a month, so it's because I'm not gone twice a month right now.
Yeah.
And as of right now, I mean, the only trip I've scheduled, she's traveling with me, so
Nice.
We just have to see if we get to go.
Yep. Yeah. Hopefully so. Things are starting to open up again. There's a restaurant that I frequent. It's near the office, and I was there last week with a friend of mine, and most of the tables were opened up. And so they had some that were still closed down in between people, just for that provide some of that distance. So things are starting to open up a little bit, and which is great. I think so. And so hopefully you're able to travel soon.
Yeah. Like I say, here in Kentucky, there's still a lot locked down, or heavy restrictions. So like the restaurants, if I remember, it's it can only be a third capacity, and I have been out since. I mean, actually, we were out at a Mexican restaurant we really liked last night, and because obviously we haven't been out to the Mexican restaurant since March, so it was nice to go out, but it was definitely different. The other weird part, well, the funny part is, so actually in the past week we've eaten out twice. Both places, it's sad because nothing that special. But both places we just really enjoy going to. It was like last night was the Mexican restaurant. Over the weekend we went to IHOP, right? Just because we like. I mean, that's somewhere we like to go on the weekends, right? And like at IHOP, you went there, and so one of the rules is they have to use disposable menus. You can't share the menus. So like IHOP, it's a limited menu, all right? But we go to the Mexican restaurant. And of course, Mexican restaurants traditionally have a really big menu, lots of options, right? They didn't reduce the number of options, but it literally was all this one little, this fold out that was like this big, right? And my wife was looking at it, she's like, well, I'm glad I know what I want because I can't read this thing. But A for effort, right? It's like, well, we're going to give you our full menu, but and we're going to squeeze it, because obviously we're not making so much money, so we're going to squeeze it into this little piece of paper.
You have to bring your own reading glasses at certain places.
Yep.
I know I would. Yeah.
Well, like I said, luckily there we knew exactly what we were getting, so it really wasn't a problem. So it was kind of funny. So let's talk a little bit about you. So the other interesting thing you do that you don't even talk very much about, but so you teach self-defense.
Yeah, in fact I used to.
It's still in your bio, so.
Yes, well, and it was recent, but I am still in martial arts. But I got started with when my daughter was really young. We went to a place at a community center and just learning some basic self-defense type things. And the more I was watching, and they had what they call parent helpers. Well, all right, so I'll be a parent helper and I'll help out with some of the kids and as well. And then I started taking Taekwondo classes, among other things. And then I started teaching some of the other kids in that self-defense class as they got into being teenagers. Then me and another guy, former Army, um, we would teach advanced stuff, grappling, and just and I've had kids where take somebody that's your age and you want to go full out and you want to beat up on somebody. Don't do that. You cannot do that. But if you want to go full out on me, that's fine.
Hmm.
I'm an adult. I'll take the punch, and then I'll teach you how to punch better.
Right.
But don't try to hit a kid that's the same age. And yeah, I helped teach a lot of kids, not just self-defense, but uh, there's some kids that I know of that it actually helped them with some of their aggression issues that they had, and it gave them an outlet, and it gave them something to do with it, with an adult that is actually expecting it, and but will help form that into something that's better. But and then from there, both my daughter and I have multiple black belts. I have a black belt in Bushido Kempo and Bushido Kinjutsu, which is a Japanese sword.
Hmm.
And I think I've got two black belts. I think my daughter has three. Um, and our head instructor is he's a he was in the Marines. He was in the Vietnam War, and he then also spent some time in the Navy. He was an NIS agent before it became NCIS.
Hmm.
He was also a agent with the Oklahoma Bureau of Investigation, OSBI, and he's been a police chief, multiple cities in Oklahoma. But his thing was, as soon as he got out of the Vietnam War, he got a hold of James Lee, who was Bruce Lee's business partner. And Bruce Lee and James Lee co-created Jeet Kune Do. Well, Bruce was off doing movies, but James was teaching out of his garage in Oakland, California. So my head instructor, Shodai Gary Deal, um, went and learned Jeet Kune Do from James Lee uh, back in the 70s. And so he's a first lineage student, and I'm a second lineage student. And really, it kind of depends because I also had a friend of mine who's also a developer, so he gets to claim me because so he's my sensei, but also the head of the instructor, the head of the organization, Shodai Giri Deal. We were at some camp some time ago, and I was coming up towards my time for my black belt test, and he also claimed to me as a student directly. So it's like, all right, so now I have two senseis. That, so anyway, long story short. So yes, I've got a very unique head instructor, and he's got multiple belts. There was a time back in the 80s when he got to face a board of grandmasters and got to present what he had been creating as his own style, which is called Bushido Kempo. And so in front of a board of other grandmasters, was approved as a founder of his own style and considered a grandmaster. So he's also what's called a 10th degree black belt. So the highest you can really earn is 9th, but 10th is when you're the founder of that style. So Shodai is Japanese for founder. And so he's got multiple titles like professor and chief and other things, but I usually call him just Shodai. So yeah, it's that's very neat, and to hear his stories has been fantastic. Last November, him and I walked around together at the gun show here in Tulsa. It was actually the largest gun show in the world. Is held here in Tulsa, and so anyway, it was just fun to walk around with him, and we weren't in class, and so we'll cut up and tease each other and whatever. But anyway, so yeah, it's been fun. In fact, I've got another camp that I'm going to. It's our summer camp. It's a big one this time of the year, and I'll be there on the last weekend of this month. Our main dojo is actually out of Tahlequah, Oklahoma. So a little 2-day event. We're learning Jeet Kune Do, Bushido Kempo, and among other things. So He even created a course for Homeland Security, and that was neat. You know, handle how to handle other business when you've got no weapons on you.
Right.
You know, it's yeah. So it's been fantastic training. So
Cool.
I absolutely enjoy. Yeah.
Cool. What I found is, an instructor is an instructor, right? I mean, so you're instructing martial arts, you're instructing, software development. Yeah, there's that desire to instruct and help others learn things.
Yeah. Yeah. I love teaching, and it also raises the bar that says, because you definitely learn more about a subject if you're responsible for teaching it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I like that challenge too.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So what's been going back to tech speaking? What's been your funnest thing you've done, tech speaking wise?
The funnest thing, or the funnest presentation.
Sure.
Well, I guess I will say that my microservices talk has been the biggest hit,
Mm-hmm.
and which is fantastic. And I've said this before as I've presented at other conferences. People will, for like that topic, they'll come because of the topic, not me, because they don't know me. But when they don't leave and they enjoyed it and they got a lot out of it, and I get good feedback out of that, it's like, okay, good. That part's mine. And that's how I knew for this talk it was doing really well. And I have a talk on Cosmos DB that it doesn't grab as much attention topic wise.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a smaller crowd. But one of the things I've done in the past, I did this at Kansas City Developer Conference, is I took a Raspberry Pi and played a lot with the networking on it, so that it was both an access point and a client to another access point. And I had a friend of mine build me a wooden box, and across the front it had little chambers in it, and it had a kind of a opaque kind of a plexiglass thing, and we put numbers on it, so it had 1 through 10 going across, and I put an LED strip in the inside of it, as the Raspberry Pi was mounted on the back side of it. And the idea is that I gave a talk on OAuth and OAuth 2. So I used that as a demonstration. So what I was able to show is that, you can go to this website, and it's running on the Raspberry Pi. And I actually had volunteers in the audience that were willing to do it. And, you need to log in, but you're going to log into Google. Now, notice that who's getting your password? Well, that's Google, not me.
Mm-hmm.
And then they give me a token. And then since you have authorized this, just quick resource thing on Google type thing. Okay, now that you're allowed that, okay, well, you randomly got, okay, you're number 4. And then you can play with the colors, and it would change the color in that light, in that bay for your number. So it's hardware and software, and I love that. I love doing that. So it was a heck of a challenge.
Mm-hmm.
Not everything worked exactly right, but because I was running Node and Express and other stuff on there, and made a quick little Angular app doing that. So that's been fun.
Mm-hmm.
That was real fun. I still have the box. I still have the Raspberry Pi and to play with. So anyway, yeah, that kind of stuff.
Cool. So I like talking to speakers about this. What's your advice for people who are thinking about speaking, right, but they're not sure about it?
Do lightning talks. Find a place that will allow you to do a lightning talk, and find somebody that
Which almost every user group will let you do a lightning talk.
yeah, exactly. But it also helps to find a user group leader that is willing to help you grow.
Mm-hmm.
And I know some leaders that they're there to help make sure the lights are on, and they help facilitate, but that's it. And I don't mean, I'm not trying to demean them by any means, but that's where they want to That's all the involvement they want to do. And we're like, you and I, Chad, that with our user groups, if somebody says, I'd like to do a lightning talk, great. Let's talk this out. What do you want out of this, and what do you want to present? How long do you want to do this? How long is your talk? And and if somebody goes, I've spoken a few times, but I still get choked up and I still worry about things. Okay, well, let's talk that out. Let's help you grow through this,
Mm-hmm.
and let's just do a quick 10 minutes. Well, what should I talk about? Let's talk about something you're passionate about. Just do a quick demonstration on that. A tiny, tiny little thing. What helps the most if somebody's nervous is when they can talk about something personal that they enjoy.
Yeah.
So, as a user group leader, it's, how can I help somebody grow? And that's just one of those areas. So, but yeah, if somebody want to get into speaking, um, don't don't try to eat the elephant all at once, right? Take a little bit of bite, see how it works. I have I've spoken at conferences. I've given bad talks. I've given what was supposed to be a good subject and was given bad. That's on me. There's been some things I was on a technical detail about a design pattern and I was wrong and I didn't know it at the time. Like, well, all right, well, I can't do anything but learn from it
Mm-hmm.
and decide to be better next time. So, and that's why it has not stopped me from presenting more. Is, well, just take it on. It's a challenge and move on. So,
Well, I know you've heard this. I say this all the time. The whole. Remember that the audience wants you to succeed. Because they're invested in it. I mean, if they're attending a talk, they have some investment, and they want you to succeed. And so one, you don't really have to worry about messing up because they get it. All right.
yeah,
At the same rate, I remember a talk I gave, and it just went horribly, right? I mean, it just, at least in my mind, it went horribly, right? And I had people come up, oh, that was awesome talk. I learned so much from it. And I'm sitting like, oh my God, I screwed it up so badly, right? Because like my demos weren't working during it. And, I mean, I was able to trudge through it. And okay, here's what we need to fix the demo. I mean, so it's not as bad as I make it sound like, but in my mind, it was horrible, right?
yeah, right.
But what I tell everyone is you're going to be your worst critic, right? Especially while you're on stage. You are your absolute worst critic.
Yes, yes. I know for me, you have to be careful of being self-conscious and way too self-conscious.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, we're self-conscious during our talks. But it took me a while, and I finally did this where I quit saying or because I was nervous.
Mm-hmm.
And for new speakers, it's kind of understood. It's going to happen. I did that in speech class in college. I hated it. You couldn't hear me because my knees were knocking so loud, and I was scared. And I'd hide behind the lectern, right, and just don't look at me. I don't know what I'm doing. Now, if I've got a camera on me, like I did the last conference in October at DevUp, I told the camera guy, I said, I'm a walker, so be prepared.
Mm-hmm.
I gave him warning. Now I cannot stay behind my computer. I cannot stay behind a lectern. I have to move. And it took me a while to get there, but now I'm finally there where over 90% of the people in your audience don't ever want to be on stage. They don't want to be presenting. They don't want to code live and watch, the challenges that come up with that. So knowing that over 90% of those people don't want to be there already, you're already conquering the room.
Mm-hmm.
So command it. Take from there, command it. This is my understanding of this. This is why I'm passionate about this. This is what I think about microservices, and and this has been my experience with it. And if it differs from somebody else, okay, fine. Nobody else can be as right as I am. That's okay. I get it. So, and even playing jokes like that. I've gotten a lot better, but it's also been recently. It's also been in the last couple of years that I've been where I don't say and while I'm trying to think of what happened, where am I at next, and even changed where my slides are more of visual clues to help teach. They're visual clues for me to tell a story and to keep that pace. So it's been a really good change, and I've really grown from it. But I've had to grow because of the failures, because of the mess-ups. Nobody does it perfect.
No.
So.
Well, I've seen a couple who come pretty darn close.
Well, yeah.
On a routine basis too, right? No, exactly. I mean, those kind of people I'm talking about are the ones who've been speaking forever, who do it constantly. I won't mention names, but I can think of a couple right off the top of my head who I've definitely modeled my speaking career after, right? It's like, well, I would love to be able to be like Joe and Bob,
Oh yeah.
Because there's definitely the whole thing of that stage presence.
Yes.
And admittedly, I mean, I've been speaking for years. I've done a couple hundred presentations. I'm nervous every single time I get up there. It's funny. I talk to my daughter, right, and she has no idea how I do that, right? She's like, I would never have the willpower to be able to do that, or be so nervous. But at the same rate, she'll get up in front of a stadium and sing the national anthem, right?
Wow.
But it's funny. We've talked about it, and we're both looking at it the same way. It's because we're doing what we love to do, all right?
Yes.
And I always tell everyone, I mean, when I speak, usually my first 1 or 2 minutes is me stumbling and getting into it. Once I'm in it, I'm just geeking out for an hour.
Yeah.
And it just happens to be, I'm geeking out about something I prep for and I know what I'm going to talk about.
Right.
But other than that, I'm just geeking out. And ever since I started thinking that way, my talks have gone a whole lot better.
Yes. Yeah. It starts with a mentality change. Allow room for mess ups so that you'll grow from them, that they happen. And move on.
Mm-hmm.
And when I realized that help with, I guess because of teaching self-defense to kids, you learn how to command a room, because I've got to get all of these kids who, they're some of the kids are picking their nose, to some of the kids are only here because their parents make them. But when you can command a room of kids, and they're all doing the same thing, do your punches, do your blocks, and just, let's do our line drills, and now let's work on our katas. You learn how to command a room, and it's a unique skill. And I'm not saying that I do it great. I've certainly got more to learn, but I don't fear the room anymore. So, yeah, it's been fun.
Yeah, I won't say I don't fear the room, but
Yeah.
I gotta admit, every I won't have, I mean, this year will be different, but every year when I get in front of, for the keynote, and I'm in front of 500 plus people, it's like, that's a little bit nerve wracking. Especially because there I don't have a prep talk, right? It's I'm more ad hocing it than anything else. So there I definitely am nervous and don't know what I'm doing. But
I would say another piece of quick advice for some people is find and I haven't done this, but there are Toastmasters, groups called Toastmasters at various cities. You might, go find one so that you walk in and you're learning from them, and then challenged where maybe it's an impromptu talk for 5 minutes. You have to talk for exactly 5 minutes, or maybe it's 15 or something like that. That kind of challenge where, messing up is expected, but so is growth.
right.
take on that challenge, and then you know, all right, well, you know, now I don't need impromptu kind of things. I'm gonna go talk about something I'm passionate about. If you can blog about it, you can talk about it. So
the only problem is every time I blog about something, I end up writing a chapter for a book. You know, and I'm like that. I don't mean to write that much, which is why I end up not blogging very much. Because I mean, every time I blog, it's, you know, I got like 20-page document. I'm like, yeah, you know, it's probably more than what everyone wants to see.
yeah, and I'm terrible at blogging as well. Very horrible at it. Certainly in the amount of, but the last blogs that I have done is because I've come across something unique with either, like, you know, learning something about Cosmos DB, or there was something about Azure. There was one of the, I think it was an application gateway. I couldn't delete it. Yeah, it would not allow me to delete. And then come to find out, it had nothing to do with the gateway. It was another resource that was dependent on, but the error message did not tell me that. So I wrote a blog about, all right, here's my experience. Here's how I, you know, if this happens to you, you know, here's what I did. And I still see every now and then that one post is read every, you know, around the world every now and then over the last several months. So, like, good, you know, if it helps them, great. Or if it's a clue to something else for them, fantastic. But that's where most of my blogs have come from. Is I face this issue, and it's, I think Scott Hanselman says this, that you should be blogging for you, as a reminder to your later self how, you know, you learned this, or you had this challenge, and here's how you conquered it. The fact that it helps others is incidental. It's great, but if you think that you are your first audience, it helps even more.
Well, I remember well, you know, when I was blogging, I basically have given up. Every once in a while, I write something, but I remember, you know, way back when I was blogging, and I wrote an article, and I probably was the one who viewed that article more than anybody else, because I kept using that as a reference.
Yeah.
And it was great that other people could also use it as a reference. But you know, I remember it was my cheat sheet of how to do, you know, some things with code analysis in particular, because it was something, you know, back then, you know, you had to keep on reconfiguring every time, and, you know, I couldn't remember all the configurations, so that's hence why I wrote that blog. I wrote that blog for that purpose. Like I said, I know for a fact I viewed it more than anybody else.
Yeah, I'm getting into PaLOUsa. That's C#. It's created by HashiCorp. Where you can write C# to build out your infrastructure in various cloud providers. Well, something I'm noticing is that with Azure, there's very little examples out there. It's like, well, there's a good blog opportunity right there, is to, you know, blog. You know, here's how I created this and tied these two together, and so if nothing else, it's for me later.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if it happens to help anybody else, then great. But it's something for me to remember. So.
Well, cool. Well, it's been great having you. I mean, we are coming up close to 1 o'clock. So any final words you wanted to say? Anything about you wanted to promote, or?
Oh yeah, definitely check out my user group. Of course, I'm always trying to promote it. It's fantastic. I love my group. Meetup.com/Tulsa Developers-net. We just put the dot in it. And I've got several events planned this summer, but I only announce them at different times because of some of the other automation that's set up. And I don't want to just flood everybody at once, but I'm also half tempted to do that since I do have a lot of speakers booked. But as well, you know, this is going to be my first time at Code PaLOUsa. I'm very excited, and so this will be fun.
Awesome.
Looking forward to it.
Awesome. No, like I said, I'm excited to have you. I mean, it's going to be a lot of fun. Even if we're going to have a virtual drink.
Yes. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, let's, I mean, sure enough, need to wrap up for the day. Let's actually look and see who's online right now on Twitch. Let's raid C# Fritz, who's, if I will say, if you're thinking about streaming, definitely check out Jeff Fritz. He does a lot of videos. He's got some good blog articles about how to get started into it. I think I've seen his talk about how to start Twitch streaming like 5 times now. I think I learned everything I watched that. So we're gonna go ahead and start that raid. So I'll start here in a moment. We'll be back tomorrow, just like normal. Again, working on the Gremlin ORM because I eventually need to get that thing done. That's the hard part. It seems like I only working on the stream, but that's just I've been so busy with everything else. But with that, I'll see everyone later, and hope you enjoy Jeff. All right. Cool. So let me push that button. Give it a moment.
Yep. Jeff sees you're getting rated. You're rating him.
Yeah, I usually put it on the browser, but I can't hear it right now.